said later, this particular topic is something I'm very interested in. It's very exciting. It's revolutionized the way that we'll be doing things, and I'm very excited, especially talking about fashion and how I can actually print my own clothes. That'll be the day. But a little bit of background about the two gentlemen, but before that, maybe just to set the context of what we're talking about. So there is the Internet of Things, right? And that is set to explode to 862 billion in 2020. This is from your smart wristbands to smart clothing to even smarter ovens. I know that we spoke recently on BFM. There's an industrial internet consortium set up which comprises of a partnership between academia, industry, and government. 3D printing, on the other hand, from clothes to medical equipment. So what is the potential and what are the ethical considerations? Statistics claim that this industry will be worth more than $10.8 billion by 2021. That's 6 years from now. And as with new technology, it's easy to get swept up in the benefits of 3D printing. It opens up the whole world of new possibilities for all industries and stands to lessen transportation costs, environmental impact, waste, and reliance on corporations by enabling the maker movement. But along with that, there are also some considerations that we have to be aware of, and we're going to talk about that. The two gentlemen that I've got here with me, Roger Chang is from Pirate 3D. You'll always remember their company name because it's Pirate, right? He's a co-founder of Pirate 3D. He's based in Singapore, Malaysian, still Malaysian, I hope. Pirate 3, one the brain drain. We're bringing him back up. Pirate 3D builds easy-to-use consumer 3D printers that are now sold around the world. The company got its start with a successful crowdfunding campaign that raised $1.4 million US dollars in mid-2013, and they aim to put a consumer 3D printer into every home. That's for my dress. Dirk Luebbert from Melinda Looi. He's a banker turned fashion entrepreneur who loves to develop ideas into brands and businesses, originally from Germany. And after 7 years with Germany's second biggest commercial bank, Commerzbank, Dirk joined fashion designer Melinda Looi, his wife, in 2005, and is currently the group CEO of Melinda Looi Group of Companies. So Melinda Looi Group is an integrated design house founded by international award-winning fashion designer Melinda Looi, which is designing, manufacturing, sourcing, and distributing 6 self-developed brands to local and international markets. So, it's a familiar name for all of us here in Malaysia. And so what we're going to do is, I know they both have something to talk about and something to show us, and then from there, very interactive. I'm sure as they're talking, you can feel free to ask questions. I've got some questions of my own, so I'm going to pass on to Roger first, or Dirk. Roger first. I'll give you Roger first. Okay, you got a video or something to show us.
Yeah, just a quick video that shows the product that we manufacture and design, which is the Buccaneer 3D printer built by Pirate 3D. I think it also gives you an idea of what 3D printing is in case you are unaware of the concept. So let's just roll the video. How does it move forward? So that's our product, the grey box there, which is the Buccaneer 3D printer. YouTube in the autoplay. Okay. I'll get that. So in essence, what 3D printing is what you're just depositing layers upon layers of material. It can be anything. It can be metal. It can be aluminum, it can be ceramics, or in our case, plastic, because plastic's the easiest to work with for a home 3D printer. So that grey box is our product, the Buccaneer 3D printer. And how it works is exactly like what you saw in the video. There is a component that extrudes plastic and then lays it down to create that red-colored vase that you see in that video. And that in essence is what 3D printing is. And that's also a very brief introduction to our product.
Okay, over to you.
Yeah, also prepare some slides. I'm very sorry, I got more slides than I expected. So I'm going to run through it, but I think it gives you kind of an idea of the making of what we did and from the beginning to end. So I'm going to quickly rush through it. What 3D printing is, we've already found it out. We actually started, as Melinda, Looi, we started in 2013 with 3D printing. We were then approached by Materialize, which is one of the biggest 3D printing software and printing companies from Belgium. And they approached us in 2013. We created what was then the first 3D printed fashion collection in Asia. And we just relaunched a new collection this year. And basically how it goes, how's the process of creating this. The initial process, as you can see here, is pretty much similar to the fashion designing. It's basically concept work. You develop a concept based on inspiration, what you want to bring over, and you identify the items which you want to create. Then we did some R&D work. So we tested out different materials, different modelings, how close together can certain hinges be, how much space you have to leave in between. You print it out on one machine, print it out on another machine, and different material, and you try to get closer to what you actually want to get with regards to the material you want to use. We had the ambition to put in crystals, so we had to mold and program it in a way that crystals would perfectly fit. We had the ambition to be nicely snug as an earpiece, so we had to make sure that it perfectly fits on the ear. So a lot of prototyping and testing and back and forth involved in the process. And then the highlight was basically what is probably, I wouldn't say the world's first, but one of the world's first for sure, full-length evening gowns. So what's special about this, you will see in the next couple of pictures. So we have all these little elements here, which are individually modeled in a CAD software, which are then put together layer by layer. And then, because the restrictions of 3D printing is many times the build size. So the machine you saw just now from Roger is a home machine, so it's a maybe shoebox size, something like that, I assume. Industrial machines are bigger. They can go up to maybe a meter, but that's pretty much it. And these machines are very expensive, and the bigger they are, the more expensive they get. So the challenge is to build something but fit it into the build size of this machine. So this was polyamide laser sintering machine, in case people of you know what it is. Basically a plastic powder, as you will see later, and which layer by layer hardened by a laser. And then you achieve this. And what we had to do in order to fit a full-length evening gown inside was, as you can see here, we had to basically fold it inside out like you would fold your clothes. But we had to do that in a 3D program. After modeling the dress, we had to fold it and turn it around. You can see a little bit of that here. Every single piece and element is put together with the software, as you can see here. This is a 3D look inside. Another visual. And then it goes to printing, basically. The file was a huge file, 7 GB or something, was sent to printing. First time the printer crashed. That happens as well, even the industrial machines. So we give it another shot, and the second time it worked. And it took almost 24 hours to print this dress, which is quite amazing. And this is the software we upload, and this is the printer software where you upload the file and then it gets started. And then in our case, it's a laser sintering machine. So basically it comes out, it's not the same as Roger's, where it's layer by layer, but here you have a layer of dust, of the polyamide dust, and it's hardened by laser, and another layer of dust hardened by laser, and so on. That's how you build the layers. And then you have this excess powder, the excess plastic here, which you can see there. But pretty much then you take it out of this white dust, and you have a ready-to-wear evening gown. No assembling, no sewing, nothing required. And this is how it looks when it comes out. This is Samuel Cunning, our collaborator on this. Amazing job he did there. And then later we wanted to finish off with some crystals, because Melinda, being a couture designer, she has to put her bling on it. So that's very important. So we put some, I think 5,000 over Swarovski crystals on it. Yeah, and basically, one thing I also want to say is a group effort. I mean, for us, it was a couple of people involved in it. Not only Melinda with the concept, but Samuel, who's 3D design expert from Australia, from Griffith University, who was massively involved, especially in the dress. Materialized the printing in Belgium. We had actually a model scanned in because we want to make sure it fits perfectly. So before we start the whole process, we had a model scanned in by a 3D. I don't know how it's called, 3D scanner, something like that. And we also have different shoe designer and accessory designer and so on. So it's really a teamwork. And this is the result. This is a shoulder piece. As you can see, it's coral inspired. You see it by a color and the Swarovski crystals in it. This is an earpiece. Another picture of the earpiece. A bracelet. And these are the shoes. Very beautiful, but also very heavy. And this is first glimpse at the dress. Second glimpse, even the back details are beautiful, and this is a full length. So this is really the full length dress. If you go online, you'll find quite some knee length dress, but this is, I think, one of the few, maybe the only full length dress out there. Yeah, and this is like the whole accessorized outfit, so the result of our work.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, like, oh, what should I wear tomorrow? You know, you can decide this and then, you know, get your dress tomorrow. Do you guys have any questions at this point? Okay, I'll get things rolling. How far? Yeah.
How much does it cost to create?
Everybody asks that questions. The thing is, we work with Materialize, so we did some kind of joint venture with them. So if you would buy the dress, just the printing cost alone would be probably over 10,000 euro, because it's just still so expensive. It takes up a whole machine load, 24 hours, and this machine costs, I don't know, tens or hundreds of thousands. I don't even know how much a machine costs, but you can millions? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm not a Materialize side, I'm from the design side, so I wouldn't know this, but it's really still expensive. That's probably one of the biggest hindrance. Besides the time of printing, it still takes quite long.
Okay, I read in a Reader's Digest last month, I think, that 3D printing is venturing into medical field. So my question is that, is it possible for this 3D printing to evolve into a bioengineering printing for patients in the future?
The technology to place cells itself is pretty rudimentary because it's just where you place the cells. I think the challenge with bioprinting, as they're calling it now, is actually telling the cells what to do. Because just because you have a stem cell, the stem cell doesn't have an idea whether it wants to be a liver cell, or it wants to be a heart cell, or it wants to be a stomach cell. The question is, how do you tell the cell what to be? Placing the cells is no problem. The problem is just telling the cells what to do after that. So they're still doing a lot of research into that. It's a very, very exciting field, and I hope that within a few years, you know, if you have any sort of disease, you can just replace an organ with a new organ that was printed in a 3D printer. That would be really cool.
I think in the medical field it's quite common. I mean, printing of bones and tooth and so on is already very common, but the organ is the future.
Oh, yes.
Do you agree on the ownership of IP to the dress? Do you all talk about who owns the IP?
Well, the thing with fashion is, I mean, a while ago I gave a speech on IP and fashion, and everybody was asking, how do you feel about other people copying you? What you do about it? You patented, you trademark, whatever you do about it. And I said the same thing as I would say here. In fashion, you cannot and you don't want to, you know, own the ownership, because it's constantly evolving. Fashion is constantly moving and constantly evolving, and there's a utility use to fashion as well. So it will be quite difficult to kind of reserve it for yourself, the IP rights. But we don't want that. As a fashion designer, every half a year, every 3 months, we're coming up with new collection, and that's our strategy as a fashion company to be out there, and we basically have to be always ahead of the competition, ahead of the counterfires, and so on.
How far do you think we'll be, you know, away from this being mainstream, 3D printing, in your opinion, Roger?
I think it's going to be about 5-10 years away. We're going to see it, you know, getting quite prevalent in our lives very shortly. But for it to be something that a person would use every day and would pass the toothbrush test. So the toothbrush test is the idea that, does this tool or this piece of software have a function that's as important as a toothbrush, something that you use twice a day? So that's the toothbrush test. I think 3D printing will pass the toothbrush test probably 5 years from now. That's when it will be something that you would use practically twice a day, every day. And within 10 years, it will be something that's so integrated into our lives. It's going to be like your mobile phones in your pocket right now. You cannot imagine a life where you didn't have the technology.
Okay. They say that 3D printing is a disruptive technology, right? The way how 3D printing works, it will replace all the current technology and how things are being done. How do you see yourself using this kind of technology and having to face the current technology providers? Is going to be? Do you see any challenge for you to promote this technology now, in the midst of the current way of the conventional way of how your field of market is operating?
Maybe I start from a fashion point of view. Fashion, the mass production is and will still be for many years the traditional way of sewing and making garments. There will be more and more 3D printing elements inside, especially when it comes to things like maybe zippers, buttons, these kind of small things, where nowadays, as you're a designer, you want to have your own brand on your zipper, on your button, on your accessories. You have to go to China and produce in the 10,000s of pieces. So if you're a fresh designer, if you have a new label, you cannot do this kind of things. So for this kind of upcoming designers, it actually enables you. It basically enables everybody to do your own design. You just need a laptop and an internet connection, basically, to do that. So that's a very powerful, the very positive thing about 3D printing. Will it take over the traditional manufacturing? Probably not so soon. At the moment, the biggest challenge is that the material is even our dress it's plastic, right? It moves, but it is not soft. It's like cotton. There are some people who experiment with some fibers. There's Electroloom. If you go on Kickstarter, there's currently a project out there which are having a Kickstarter about creating a textile. But it takes very long to do that, and in the same time, you can probably create like 50 or 100 T-shirts. So why would you go for this new method? So it's still a bit of development to do. I will see it as a for the next 5 to 10 years as a niche market, but for especially customized items. For example, think of bridal gowns. Bridal gowns nowadays, people will go to a tailor and make it into their size, whereas their day-to-day baju, they just go buy it off the rack and sizes. So maybe in the future, this is this very niche market or a specific market where people will say, okay, I want this one in the lifetime bridal gown, this shoes and whatever. I will buy it online. Although that said, actually, shoes probably going to go more earlier mainstream than gowns, because shoes actually has quite some development already in the market, and accessories as well, because accessories also is a very loved by this 3D printing again, because you can do one-off production runs, and you can do your mold in 3D printing and use that to create your other things. And size plays a role in the cost of 3D printing. So accessories obviously are smaller, so it's actually cost efficient to produce accessories with 3D printing.
Another question: Do you see this new technology helping to position your brand better compared to your competitors?
Okay. Yes. I mean, to be very frank, at the moment for us, it's two things. It's exciting, challenging, and it's a great PR opportunity. There's not many people in the world who do 3D printed fashion, and we entered to it relatively early, and we really enjoy doing it. And it gives us a lot of eyeballs from around the world. So that's really fantastic. However, the goal is obviously to commercialize the whole thing. So at the moment, what we're doing is we're taking this kind of amazing 3D couture collection kind of as a PR pull, as a concept, a proof of concept. And we're trying to develop accessories which are smaller and hence commercially sellable along with it. So if the goal is that we go to an exhibition, we show this, everybody think it's wow, and they want to have a smaller piece, something maybe a bracelet or something small, and we can sell them the smaller piece, or they can go online and just order it online.
Roger, you said, you aim to put a consumer 3D printer into every home. This consumer 3D printer, what do you envision that it'll be able to do? I mean, right up to making a dress, or just something a little bit more simple? What's your vision?
I think in the near term, what your home consumer 3D printers can do is going to be quite limited. Perhaps making smaller things. You make accessories, you could do that. You want to make a shoe, maybe you could do that. You want to make a whole gown, you'll have to go over to Melinda Looi and get that done. But as the technology evolves, I think eventually you'll start creating more and more. I'm not very sure what the future will hold for us. It could be a system where you will have a bunch of service bureaus. So instead of, let's say, a post office, you have a local 3D printing center that produces a large object for you instead of you having to build it at home. Because I think when you're limited by size and perhaps by cost, that's only so much that you can do with a 3D printer. I'm not sure what the limit is to how much people will pay for a 3D printer for their homes. Perhaps at max, a consumer may pay $10,000 for a 3D printer that does a lot of advanced things. Our 3D printer itself is only $999. It's about 1,000 USD for a fairly basic printer that can do quite a lot of things already. So, that being said, I think the future will be sort of split. There will be basic home printers for doing more basic things. And then when you want to do something more advanced, you go to a shop. Kind of like with your 2D printers today. When you want to print, let's say, a document for your immigrations, you can do it at home. But if you want to print, let's say, a banner for an event like today's event, you would go to a shop to do it.
Yes.
May I ask what differentiates your 3D printers to the others out in the market?
Yeah, so we focus on a few things. We realized that 3D printers are quite difficult to use. They're not a very user-friendly device yet. It's not like an iPhone where you just pull it out of the box, charge it, and then you can instantly start using it. Right now, 3D printers need a lot of setup, a lot of calibration, and a lot of fiddling with before they'll start to work properly. So we designed our 3D printers to work essentially out of the box, perfectly with an app that links directly to it. You can work our 3D printers with an iOS or an Android app that links directly to the printer. So it's very easy for you to use it. And on top of that, we realized that most people do not know how to actually design things on the 3D printer. May I have a show of hands? How many of you here know how to CAD design or 3D design? three people out of a whole room. Yeah, that's actually quite reflective of actual world statistics. Not many people know how to design things in 3D. So we link our 3D printer directly to an online library. So that you can just pick an object from there and then print it directly. So that's the other side that we focus on, giving people things to do with the 3D printer. And we are marrying these two things together, ease of use and having things to print, in the hopes that it will be a very, very consumer-friendly 3D printer, which I believe is something that the market has not achieved yet.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you said that you have a library related to your 3D printer, which I believe is the way to go. The value will be in the content in the future when everybody will have a 3D printer at home. But that will ask some question related to IP because, as you know, there is a patent related to design. So if now in your library you have design which has been patented, so consumer won't be able to print it at home, else they will infringe the patent. So my question is, do you link this library with patent design library to be sure that your consumer can use it and print it?
I see. That's actually a pretty tricky question, but it's a good one. Actually, for most of the designs, we protect it by using a DRM type system. Because it's a library that's linked directly to the hardware, which is our 3D printer. We can protect it with a integral DRM type system. If you are the customer who's printing this object, no one else can print the object. You cannot download the object and manipulate it or distribute it elsewhere. So that's part of our DRM system. We don't have this feature now, but soon we intend to allow users to monetize their designs. Let's say I've designed a phone cover, I put it on our library, and say, okay, it's 99 cents to download this design and print it. And you cannot get it working unless you pay the 99 cents. So that's part of the DRM system as well, allowing people to monetize their designs. But to your question on patents and all that, I think right now a lot of designs are not covered by patents because they are more aesthetic and not so functional. Patents require a functionality to it. And that's sort of a distinction between like just pure design and functional objects.
Okay, my background, I just give a little bit of background. So I'm from Questel, which is a database patent. And we have two databases, one in patent, which is functionality and a lot of things, but another one on patent design, which is the aesthetic part of it, especially on 3D objects. And it's maybe less known from industries. I agree for now it's not that advanced. But we have to know that there is patent related to design and to aesthetic, especially 3D products. And infringement in US cases against it are quite aggressive actually, especially patent trolls who are quite aggressive in this field. So I believe for now it's not important because there is not so much cases of 3D printed objects. But I believe in 2-3 years ahead it will be one of the main challenge, I believe. Just to, yeah.
Yeah, I agree on that. From my perspective, I'm not so concerned about that. Because there is, I can't remember what the act was called, but essentially, let's say you upload a copyrighted movie to YouTube. YouTube is not the one who's going to get the rap for it. Instead, they'll issue a takedown notice, and then they'll take it down. And if YouTube doesn't act on that, that's when they're in the wrong. So I think for design libraries, it's going to work similar. If the copyright holders or the patent holder says, hey, that's my design on your website, and I'm not the one who uploaded it, can you please remove it? Then we have to remove it. It's, I think, probably the most fair way to deal with it, and I think that's what's going to happen within the near future. But you're right. It's going to be very, very sticky because it's probably a matter of time before someone starts pirating like Chanel bags or something like that with a 3D printer. What do you do then? I think, in short, I really think the answer to this is quite similar to what they've done with the music industry. They, instead of encouraging pirates and everything, you let people download stuff for quite cheap on a platform called iTunes. And I think the iTunes solution is probably the best way to go around it. Give people a very easy to use, fairly affordable type of solution to get intellectual property rather than enforcing it and trying to clamp down on everyone and forcing them to pay high prices, because that will always create a black market.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm from a commercialization agency. Just wondering, now 3D printing is coming up, a technology. How does Asian country perceive this technology? And if, let's say, new startups takes up this technology to create products, all right? How easy is the commercialization process? I mean, will it be adapted? Because in Asian country, cost is one of the main factors that they look into. So what's your opinion?
You want to cover this?
Maybe parts of it. I mean, I'm not coming from the technology side, so my knowledge there is a little bit limited. But we do look in the commercialization of things for our fashion products. And as mentioned, mostly the cost is at the moment configured by the volume, by the print volume and the amount of material used. So if you print in gold, of course, it's much more than in plastic, than in ceramic, and so on. So it's about smart design where you can save cost if you fold it in a certain way, if you have it in a certain way in the machine. So there's a lot of ways how you can bring down the cost. The other thing is really the machine, because machines are getting faster and better every day. So I think as the machine speed gets faster, the cost will go down. At the moment, it's really about looking for these very niche, unique products which you maybe only can do on a 3D printer or something. If you go, for example, to iMaterialize, which is one company where consumers can upload their products and they can buy products from there. There you see some quite quirky, unique products which you wouldn't think about, more like novelty kind of thing. So this kind of thing you can already sell very easily, but the mainstream products, you still cannot compete on the price. So I think it will still take a while. I'm not sure whether that answers your question. But, I mean, the good idea is to have your own printer, then you can just print yourself, And
just so when you say you have your own product, right? When you say you have a printer, what's your market? Which market are you targeting? And so far, pretty sure you have done forecasts. So what's your assumption made to cater for this emerging technology?
Wow, that's actually the billion-dollar question here, literally. If you look at what other firms are doing and what the entire industry is doing right now, consumer 3D printing is a bit of a solution looking for a problem. Because most of the time when you go to a consumer and tell them, hey, buy a 3D printer, they would ask you this, what do I do with it? So I think that's actually one of the main questions that we are answering ourselves right now. What sort of markets do we target? We found that going for people who already need 3D objects printed, probably the best sort of people to look for. Right now it's usually engineers, architects who are picking it up first, because to prototype things or to get someone to carve a building model out for you, it's very expensive. And if you give them a 3D printer instead, they're very happy. Just for a cost reference, a spool of 3D printing material with us cost about $30 for about 400 grams. So if you were to build like a building model, it's not going to cost you more than $10, because the thing about 3D printing is that it's a very efficient process. A lot of the objects that you make are kind of hollow in the center. They're very strong, but still hollow in the center. So you actually save a lot of material that way. And when you compare the prices of things that are, let's say, hand carved versus something that you make from a 3D printer, 3D printed objects tend to be actually cheaper than bespoke handcraft items. So these are sort of the low-hanging fruits of the market right now. As the technology gets better, obviously, you can make more and more complicated things even cheaper than you do today. And you start supplanting maybe some small-run production manufacturing. But for right now, the main thing that we are displacing in the market is things that are very, very short run, things that are handmade, for example. That's what 3D printing is replacing right now. So we look for categories within the market that currently rely on bespoke handmade items. I think fashion's a pretty good example. I'm not saying that you should not buy handcrafted Italian shoes. Obviously, that's probably still something that has value. But you will see 3D printing creeping more and more into these sort of areas where one-off items are being made. Is very, very, very expensive, because 3D printing makes it a lot cheaper.
So obviously, you look at this as something that has disrupted and will disrupt a couple of industries, and I guess in the case of fashion and all that. So with all these industries in mind, they probably have to look at changing their business models then in that case, so that they don't get left behind. And I think you give a very good example of music as well. Is that the kind of insight? I mean, when you look at what Melinda Looi is going to do in the future, when this becomes a bit more mainstream, how will Melinda Looi, the brand, evolve?
I would say adapting the business model. I wouldn't say totally change it. That will be many years down the road. But they're very good to adapt it and to be early in the game, to understand what is different now and what you have to pay attention to. As I said, for clothing, it will still be a while. Accessories, I think we're going to see something fairly soon. Shoes just now is a good example, because think of orthopedic shoes. Think of people who need maybe a heel to be bigger, smaller, whatever. This is a very easy market. There's 3D scanners out there for $1,000. You can scan your shoes, your feet, and then you print your shoes and done. I mean, this is some of the also low-hanging fruits, I would say.
No? Okay. One of the things as well, I think with 3D, they do come in with a lot of ethical considerations, and one of which is energy, right? People talk about how it consumes a lot of energy. Your thoughts around this, Roger?
Actually, I think it's energy break-even when compared to traditional manufacturing, because if you're 3D printing at home, it's basically direct to consumer production, versus, let's say, you produce something in Shenzhen. It has to go on a truck to head to the port. From the port, it has to get hoisted onto the boat, and then from the boat, it's got to go across the Pacific Ocean to somewhere in California. From California to a distribution center, to a warehouse, a local storage, and then finally to a retail store, finally to your home, and then you have to drive to Tesco and then bring it back, for example. That's a lot of energy that you're wasting all the way there. Perhaps you're aggregating it over a very large box of products, but even then, there's this very huge logistics cost that you are offsetting by 3D printing instead. I don't have the numbers for it. I would love to see future research done into this, but I would think that 3D printing is almost on par with traditional manufacturing in terms of how much energy is being used to get the product from production to consumers.
I've got one question.
You're allowed.
Don't mind. Okay. We heard about how digital, I mean photography. You heard about how digital killed companies like Kodak. What do you think 3D printing would advance into bringing down what kind of industry? probably in the soonest future that we are looking at?
Good question.
Video didn't kill the radio star.
I think the answer might surprise us, like I said, we're not really sure what the future will hold. That's the best thing about this industry. It's very exciting. You don't know what's around the corner. It could be anything. It could be, let's say, one thing that I'm doing now is Tamiya scale models. When you're a kid, you used to put together these kit tanks and everything. I think maybe down the road, instead of having to clip the tanks out of those sprues, you can just 3D print all the tank parts and then assemble it together. Yeah, Legos. I think certain toys are going to be replaced because as it is, the toy industry is slowly being replaced by, let's say, iPads. I don't see small kids playing with toys nowadays. They're always on their iPads. So yeah, maybe toys, perhaps small niche applications first before finally it gets more and more mainstream.
Okay. No, the other thing as well, and I just have to bring this up, and the dependence on plastic and air emissions and all that, is that something that's also been discussed as well?
Yeah. So when we first started working with 3D printers, we had a prototype that used ABS plastic. ABS is a petroleum-derived plastic. We started to notice that our staff kept getting sick every time they sat around the printer. So there's emissions that do come out of the 3D printer. It does make you quite sick, which is why when we designed our 3D printer, we built it around a plastic called PLA, polylactide, which is based from corn. It's a bioplastic that doesn't have a lot of noxious fumes. And the best part is that you can recycle it afterwards. So it does not end up as more trash in the landfill. If you bury PLA plastic in the ground, it will eventually decompose and it'll go back into the soil.
Okay. This one, and Malaysia will be, probably leading in this area. It says that there's this company called Gentle Giant, which owned the licensing rights to toy franchises such as The Hobbit, The Walking Dead, blah, blah, blah. And Gartner has said that companies may lose at least 100 billion in 4 years to licensing or IP owners, and 3D printing will change the business market and the black market for these items, and the legislation will have to rush to catch up. So are we very far from that reality? How ready are we in Malaysia, or will we be leading in the black market space?
It's quite interesting. You were saying the whole global 3D printing market is 20 billion and they're losing 100 billion?
Yeah, we'll lose 100 billion. Gartner has said that companies may lose at least 100 billion in 4 years to licensing.
But earlier you said the whole 3D printing market is only 20 billion or 10 billion. I mean, the numbers are
are not conflicting. Okay, okay, so
basically, I mean, that's usually what happens. Of course, something new comes up and people will draw the big figures and say, hey, so much money is lost and so on. There is obviously the risk, and the music industry is a good example for that. I mean, when the digital music came up, there was a lot of problems there, and they overcame it, at least to a certain degree, I think. For Malaysia, I think we will be in par in getting up the legislation. The only thing I would hope is that the enforcement will be there, because that's maybe something we have to work on when it comes to not only 3D printing but general IP protection in Malaysia.
Right. Should a body or a consortium be set up? Do you think that will be the right thing to do, to not to regulate but to oversee the future of 3D printing?
I personally don't think it's needed, because 3D printing is applied everywhere. In the car industry, they're using 3D printing for prototypes. In the food industry, you can 3D print your foods. In the medical industry, you have 3D applications where you have to have certain materials which are FDA approved and whatever not. So I think within the industry, they will have their legislation and associations in place, and they will make sure that whatever 3D printing is happening within their field is safe and according to their norms and standards.
Roger, you also feel that there shouldn't be a consortium, there shouldn't be heavy regulation around these things?
Yeah, I agree. Simply because regulation invites the chance for corruption. Just like you wouldn't regulate the internet because of net neutrality issues. You don't want certain providers saying, hey, stop using Netflix, we're going to throttle the data on that, start using my own video streaming services instead. You don't want to have a body that says, hey, stop using these 3D printers because these guys are not paying me any money. Start using these 3D printers instead, and I regulate against those other 3D printers. What you want is more of a free market, because when you allow a free market to flourish, you allow the best resources and best technologies to come forth, rather than something that has a good relationship with the governing body.
Anyone's got any other questions? Yes. Next. Oh, okay. The one behind him. Here.
Oh, thank you. The technology around 3D printing seems to be moving very fast. What are some of the most exciting advancements that you think will be coming up?
I saw this TED talk the other day about this 3D printer, which was extremely fast, and I was really excited because speed is so important in 3D printing. Not only for making things faster and cheaper, but also because the faster you build, the more stable the structure will be. But then I've spoke to some people in the 3D world, and they're saying the problem is this technology, it's this and this, and they went very technical and basically saying you cannot scale it. But these are the things which I would be excited about. If the speed would really go up, that would be something amazing.
Yeah, I agree on that. We'll see a day very soon where it's like Star Trek. You go up to a machine, tell it, I want X, and then it just makes it instantly on the spot within 3 seconds. That day will come eventually. That's what I feel, based on how the technology is moving.
Do you think there's an opportunity or a space where Malaysia can lead if we're in this space? If we're clever, are there areas that we can look at that we may lead in this space? Or is it really, and it's free for all, anybody can actually take the leap here?
I think Malaysia, we have quite a good industry for animation, movie animation. If you think about what movies, animated movies coming out of Malaysia, we have some very good universities who train these people. So a lot of 3D modelers, 3D animators in Malaysia. And these are doesn't really matter whether you model a movie or whether you model an object. So these skills can definitely be used. And I think we have a quite decent base in Malaysia, which we can grow from.
3D animation, okay. Any other questions? Yes? Yes, another one. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I had a question specifically on the clothes. I know you mentioned you make them by hardening the powder using a laser. Can you affect the density or the texture of the object that comes out of it?
It depends on the machine. And it depends on the material as well. I mean, certain materials, it could be powder, it could be a resin as well. So there are, for example, resins where the laser power determines the color of the material. So you can actually have objects or patterns within a clear product where you can, for example, we had a necklace before, which is the bird, and you can see through the surface, you can see the ribs, because at this part, the laser power was hardened. And you can go even further, it gets brown in different colors as well. There are also printers now which print 3D, 3D printers which print 3D. The density, not sure to what degree the density will change much, but the color for sure. Does that answer the question?
On the density, we have a printer that uses FDM technology, kind of like what we produce. You can change the density of the object. Basically, you just fill in more of the object, and then you make it more hollow if you want it to be less dense. That's what they've done. They've done some pretty amazing things with it. I saw this piece of software that figures out how to make a horse balance on one foot by changing the density of the object at different places. So that's actually a very interesting application for it.
Dirk, could you actually show the video where the dress was showcased by a model wearing a model? I think it came out on a morning show in the US.
I don't think I have it here.
All right. Anyway, but if you all have a look at it, and it was just very interesting how that has just gone global. What sort of opportunities, from having come on in America and all that, what sort of things arose from that opportunity?
I mean, it started all the way back in 2013 with the first collection, where all of a sudden we have people coming to our website, sending us media inquiries from Poland, from various parts of the world we never have heard of before. And then 2015, we actually launched this collection in New York. There's a New York print show, one of the big events in the print circles, where we launched it. And then the Today Show picked it up. They featured on Live and Fox News and so on. So all this thing kind of happened without really us doing much. We just put it into the spotlight, and people will come to us and say, hey, can we have it on our show? Hey, can we exhibit in this museum? Can we do this kind of things? So that's the great thing about doing something innovative and something so new, and having also a really good team. I mean, we materialized as a partner, and Samuel Cunning. We have this great team where everybody puts together and comes up with opportunities. because it's so new, that's really why people are quite excited about it, and we're getting a lot of attention and feedback and inquiries, and which is great.
Has anyone asked to buy the dress yet?
To
Has
buy.
anyone asked to buy the
To
dress?
buy. No, actually, I'm waiting for Rihanna or Beyonce to call me. That will be the dream, of course.
Okay, waiting for Rihanna, Beyonce.
No,
okay.
actually, I did send an email to the stylist, but they didn't reply yet. So
Okay.
who knows?
We'll wait. Any other questions? Oh, yes. Actually, I'll just leave the microphone with you guys.
We won't hog it, I promise. I think one discussion I think we probably touched briefly, but haven't really gone deeply into, a lot of the business models surrounding 3D printing, you know, aside from the hardware that you do sell, a lot of it is the intellectual property that you're going to produce through your database, through the designs, because not everyone can do it. How do you feel about open source design, open source software to use your printers without going through your design software?
We sort of just provide a library essentially, mostly just to protect the rights of objects that are on the library. That being said, you know, it's actually a pretty open platform that we have. If you have designed something, let's say Google SketchUp, which is free, I think it's still free, you can just print it out on the printer, provided that you turn it into an STL file. That's actually, you know, I touched on a lot of the library because I'm focusing a lot on the consumers, but some of the clients that we have are professional users, engineers and architects who actually generate their own 3D files. Obviously, we do not lock down our printer and tell them you can only print what's on our library, because that would really limit the utility of a 3D printer. You're free to just use whatever STLs you want, including whatever you download from open source libraries, as long as it's the right file format.
Any other questions? Concluding remarks, gentlemen? Nothing? All right. Thank you. I really enjoyed this session. It's very exciting, and you know, some insights maybe, as you were saying, animation and the possibilities are there. So thank you, and we'll be heading to the plenary session, and that's at Ballroom A again, and we're going to be concluding with that in Ballroom A. So thank you again, gentlemen. Dirk, Roger, very enjoyable, very insightful. Have a look at that video, and dressed by, you know, with a real model. I'll have to fit into that dress. Thank you.